Dear participants, we see many of you coming in. We have quite a few people registered, so it takes a little bit of time. I would like to give everyone the opportunity to enter the room. So we wait 1 more minute maybe, and then we can proceed. A very warm welcome to this first webinar of the IAU in 2023. But before anything else, I would like to give the floor to Professor Pointshine Monkonvanit, who's the president of Siam University, an esteemed former board member of the International Association of University, and more so, a very dynamic chair of the IAU working group on higher education and research for sustainable development for many years now. And so part and parcel of all the work that we've been carrying out over the years on sustainable development. So Pointshine, I give you the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Helix, and dear Isabel, dear participants. Since this is also my first meeting globally after the new year, on behalf of the IAU HESD working group, I would like to convey to all of you my best wishes for a very happy new year. I mean, New Year and Chinese New Year. And wish you a very happy New Year, and thanks all of you who work together with IAU and our HESD working group throughout the year to make higher education the important transformative tools toward the achievement of SDGs, hopefully in 2030. As UN Secretary General Guterres has mentioned, we have only 2 choices: breakthrough or breakdown. The choice is ours to make. COVID situation has also made our problems such as inequality, health and well-being, and even climate crisis and good education more difficult to solve. Anyhow, we embrace a lot of good practices and impressive leadership during the past COVID time. We are also proud that since IAU Kyoto Declaration in 1993, IAU has been one of the very few organizations that continuously work effectively towards sustainability, including IAU Equitos statement in 2014, the first survey in 2016, and the second one in 2019, including this third survey in 2022. We are very glad to see a lot of positive development of higher education institutions in tackling the global problem of our time. Why we are launching the results of this survey? The result of the first and second survey can be seen in our website. IAU HESD was lucky to have our partner doing this survey, namely ASEF, Asia Europe Foundation by Rectores, and also Crue, Spanish Rector Conference, and MECCE, the Monitoring and Evaluation of Climate Communication Project. And the most important are IAU member and higher education institutions, which include 464 institutions from 120 countries across all regions of the globe, as well as my colleagues in HESD working group. Thanks also to all IAU staff in our headquarters in Paris, under the leadership of our Secretary General. Without further ado, let me invite our Secretary General, Hillich Van Land of IAU, to introduce and provide brief context of the session. Thank you very much, and ขอบคุณครับ
Kopkunka, Pointshine, wonderful. And the best regards to Ying, who's close to you there as well.
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
very
please.
pleased to open again this session, the first session indeed, the first session in the IAU webinar series on the futures of higher education in the world. The future of higher education will go through a stronger engagement of the higher education sector, the higher education institutions, and the higher education organizations to address the global goals that we face. And as you said, Pornchai, it's very important that we don't go down, but that we really face the challenges as we can as institutions around the world. We know that we have more than 250 million students coming through our institutions, many faculty, staff, admin, and we have a unique opportunity and place in society to make the difference for the future. And the difference for the future will go through education. And higher education in particular. We know that higher education has many ramifications everywhere in the education systems, pre-primary, primary, secondary education, lifelong learning. And so higher education is really key to many of the things that we do around the world. The engagement with sustainable development is something that the IAU has championed for many years, as you recalled as well. And we started maybe with the adoption of the Brundtland report in the early 1990s, when we called on the higher education leaders around the world to engage with SD and to make sure that their institutions would actually embark on the different ideas and visions and missions for the future of society by adhering to the principles of that report at the time. The discourse has changed and moved away from environmental studies to really embed sustainable development in everything that we do, in particular in education, but also research and in community engagement. And over the years, we've seen this movement towards ESD being reinforced. It had been questions for decades. There have been many attempts to define what is it, education for sustainable development, but we're there. We now know what it is, we know how to do it, yet we still lack the extra push in order for the institutions to push themselves also in the future when it comes to ESD. So what we did when the Agenda 2030 was adopted and the SDGs that were defined at the time, we decided to create a global cluster on higher education and research for sustainable development. That's why you see on this world map these vignettes pop up where universities are located who champion one of the SDGs. Then, as the little dots also indicate, these institutions network with other universities on each time the 5 continents, with institutions of many different kinds, bigger universities, smaller ones, publics and privates, and really trying to address the different target set for each of the SDGs, yet also connecting to all the other SDGs, seeing how SDG 4, quality higher education led by York University resonates with 3 or with 9 or with 7 or with 11, because all these SDGs have their own set of targets, but they are interrelated, and education and research community engagement form part of the dynamics around it very strongly. So this working group is one of the major achievements of the IAU, in the sense that we have reached out to universities all around the globe. 70 are committed officially, many others work with us, and we hope to grow that community in the years to come. One of the other initiatives that we undertook is what we're celebrating today, is these global surveys on understanding higher education and research for sustainable development and what academia actually can do to advance on these topics. And so we have had a first global survey a few years back, then a second one that took the same questions and pushed them into the realities of the time. And in this 2022 global survey, we've invited partners to come on board very strongly, as you will hear in the session today, to also define the kind of questions that are on the table today. Where does this go? Where can we go in the future? There's a little fear that I will put on the table right here. I hear a going back to a discourse more around climate change and greening, and moving a little bit away from education for sustainable development. I hope that with our group and the universities around the world, we can really continue to also advocate for ESD in its broadest sense, because we've reached a milestone there. We are able to do it, and we can address the greening issues and the climate change matters, but we need education for sustainable development in a very broad sense in order for all of the work that is being carried out under that denomination. We're inclusive, we reach out globally, and we really make the transformation needed today for today and tomorrow happen. And so we hope that this global survey report will be part of this transformation process. And I'm now very pleased to give the floor to Isabelle to also start and present the outcomes of the report. And then there will be presentations by our key partners for this specific edition from ASEF, from Crue, and from MECCE. And then in the second part of this webinar, we will have a panel discussion on leadership for sustainable development. What does it mean? Where can we go? I see in the participants list many experts in the field and new people coming as well. So I hope you all will have questions and demands as to where this can go. And we will talk about practices. Sometimes it's good to have a focus on good practices, yet it is also very good to understand where practices are not the right ones and how to change those. And then there will be a Q&A period on the basis of the questions that you will have put in the chat. So thank you very much. The floor is yours, Isabelle.
Thank you very much, Hilletje, and welcome everyone to this launch event for the IAU HESD survey report today. I'm very pleased to be sharing with you today this report, which you will be able to access in an online format at the end of the session. For now, I will just introduce you to this report and to the main findings that we had in this IAU HESD third global survey. So I'm going to share my screen again so you can actually see what I will be talking about. So this is our report. You're seeing here the cover of the report already. Oh, there it is. And as you can see, we have titled this third iteration of the survey, Accelerating Actions for the SDGs in Higher Education. So we're referring to the Sustainable Development Goals, to the Agenda 2030 framework, quite a bit in this questionnaire and in the report. For the reason that it's a very holistic framework, that it's been very globally used by the United Nations, and many universities have been using it. And those who have not been using it, and they have asked themselves the question, do we work with SDGs? Yes, a lot of the teams are actually reflected in the work that universities do. And this is just one of the frameworks to work with when working with sustainable development. So when I'm presenting this report, I would just like to introduce you briefly to the report after the acknowledgement. So there have been many people involved in the creation of this report over the past year and a half, starting with the first conversations around the questionnaire, the discussions if we should, what changes needed to be made to the questionnaire from 2019, what would we like to add, what partners would we like to work with. And as Professor Broncha already said in the beginning, thank you to our main organizational partners, which were ASEF, the Asia Europe Foundation, Crue, the Spanish University Rector Conference, and the MECCE project, the Monitoring and Evaluating Climate Communication and Education project, which are three very different but also very interesting partners, because then they can, based on the data of the survey and adding to with their own research, they will have breakout studies or are actually already working on further research projects. I would also like to thank the two co-authors that have worked with me on this report, which are Hilletje van 't Land, our Secretary General, and Margaret Harris, who's a project officer at the IAU as well. And to two very important contributors, which is Emma Follen, who has been working on the questionnaire and the data collection in the first half of 2022 as an intern with the IAU, and Marina Campos Rivera, who's working with the MECCE project, but has supported us in the data analysis as a research assistant. The IAU HESD working group, I cannot name them all, but there is a name list in the report giving them credit for their feedback throughout the process, the IAU board, and also the IAU HESD cluster network, several experts, and other institutions and organizations that have helped us distribute the report and make sure that we received the high number of responses that we could receive for the survey. We have received 464 valid responses from HIEs, meaning higher education institutions. So the aim was to have it globally open, but also to have one institution respond in the survey. We have responses from 120 countries, from all continents. We have quite a few from Europe and Asia. We have quite a big group from Spain, also regarding the communication outreach in that regions, but we do have also responses from Latin America, from Asia, from the Pacific, and from African universities. As we already have said, this is the third survey. So if you're interested in going back and seeing how it has developed, you will find on our IAU website also the survey reports from 2019 and from 2016, the data and the report shortly after in January as we have it now. So now we're in 2023, but our data was collected last year. We have used for the outreach our World Higher Education database, which IAU is working on and updating in cooperation with UNESCO. So this is really a database with over 20,000 accredited higher education institutions. So we have used this and invited people to take part. But of course, we know that it's a significant amount of time also taking this survey. The report is structured in the following way. So this report starts with an introduction. It sets it into context. Where are we now? We have less than 10 years left until 2030. What is going to happen after the SDGs? We don't know yet which follow-up framework will be presented on the United Nations level. How are universities coming in? What's the role of universities? And how did we actually construct this survey? Which methods did we use to find out how universities are working with sustainable development and the sustainable development goals. And then the main part of the report is the results section, where we present the results, the data that we have collected in these different sub-chapters that you can see here that follow also the original questionnaire. We are working with the whole institution approach, meaning that we don't look only at teaching, but we look at teaching, at research, at community engagement, and really looking which parts of the university are involved, which stakeholders are involved. What's the institutional commitment? What are the partnerships? Which SDGs are addressed in particular? Just some examples that we are looking at into detail. And in the end, we also have a discussion. We put it in context with, there has been a UNESCO World Higher Education Conference last year. There's the yearly UN HLPF, the forum. So there's a lot happening also on the intergovernmental side and on the high level part in the discussions that could be relevant for universities or that are actually asking for this type of information to be presented to policymakers to inform also the decisions in the future. I want to just give you some insights. I will not go into detail of everything, but just we have been saying that we really wanted to stress and to present how higher education institutions and universities are working on sustainable development globally. We do analyze these under these different subsections, this engagement based on the questions that we had in our questionnaire. And we did, where it was appropriate, compare also the results with the previous survey, which was not always possible because some questions were also changed slightly to make them better to understand. Some questions were added along the way, but it's still interesting because we can see some trends for the question where comparisons are available from the last iteration of the survey. And we will use, of course, this data, what I just mentioned, to also in IAU's advocacy role to really discuss with UNESCO at the UN level, how can the role of higher education be stronger in these policy discussions. From these 464 responses, we had the biggest group from Europe and from Asia and the Pacific, also quite a significant proportion from Africa, Latin America, North America, and the Middle East are unfortunately a little bit underrepresented. So we are aware of that, and that's something that we can improve for the next survey as well. We did also have a mix of the profile of respondents. So as you can see here, we have a very high, almost 40% section of leadership. So respondents that identified themselves either rector, vice chancellor, or any other function of leadership in a higher education institution. Then academic staff and administrative staff. We also have head of institutions and leadership level is might be also overlapping a bit here, and a smaller proportion of students. We did not reach out specifically to students in the survey because we were looking for institutional strategy, and we were looking also for a bit of a more holistic picture that might not be available to students, also the data we've been asking. Something that I found interesting, and this question we also have a comparison with 2019 and 2016, how people understand sustainable development. And this is something that Hilleger was briefly saying. It is still, people understand a lot still this idea of environmental sustainability. So we asked them also what they understand about the different key concepts that we are using throughout. And there's a very high expert and immediate knowledge of these concepts also used throughout the survey in the UN context. Before I go on, and my presentation is already getting a bit too long, I just wanted to stress that we had several opportunities and challenges that have come up, also the impact of COVID-19, the problems of funding, resources in terms of time and staff time, and in terms of financial resources for research and SDGs is always a challenge that has been identified. One of the interesting opportunities in my view was that really sustainability and SDGs offered the possibility to work together also within different disciplines and between different faculties, and also beyond the university, work in a region, work in networks on a specific SDG or specific topics. So we had very interesting examples and very innovative approaches as well, using this perspective that has been reflected in the responses. I've mentioned already the issue of funding, and another issue that has been mentioned is really this increased South-North cooperation and training opportunities, especially for outside Europe. We did also have include a question we didn't have the last times regarding the effect of the pandemic on sustainability activities. A positive effect that was a bit surprising is that SDG activities increased for many universities because they had the possibility to really reflect on their strategy, think about new projects, and do tasks that they might not have been able to do in their day-to-day activities. And also they were able to cooperate more globally through online meetings and virtual means of communication as well. Some key takeaways that I want to leave you with. So IAUs have identified SDGs as a framework that they can work with and work across different disciplines and areas using this whole institution approach. The leadership has been identified by the majority of the respondents as really in charge of sustainability activities. We had a question asking, who do you think is in charge? Who can steer this agenda forward? And it is the leadership, but interestingly, most involved in the activities are in the end the academic staff, so it has to go both ways. There is still a lot that universities can do, improving their whole institution approach to the SDGs, and also in terms of really having this strategy around it, enabling then also funding. There's a lot of regional differences and also different challenges because also of course, the circumstances are always very different. In some region, community engagement, which is also a huge part of the SDGs, plays a major role. In others, the focus is more on research or on teaching. And the overall need really to stress these examples of good practices that you're hopefully going to hear from also in the second part of the session. So I really invite you to have a look at this report, to read about the different questions and the different parameters that we've used and the examples that we are also giving there. So this is already too early, sorry for that, but I will share the link at the end of the session. And now for the second part, thank you so much. I would like to give the floor back to Hilleger for the introduction of our panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. I see that there is no possibility to have the Q&R activated on my end, and apologies for that. I hope it's not the case for the participants, because it's always very nice also for participants to have the opportunity to exchange among themselves also in the chat and to send messages. But please do send messages and we will respond, no matter how this the technicalities will allow you to exchange amongst yourselves. So that's more of a technicality, but I'm really pleased to see many of the people who have contributed from close by or from afar also in responding to our questionnaire. So that's very good news. So I'd like to give the floor to three of our main partners, and I would like to start with you, Reka. Reka Tozam, you're the director of the Education Department at the Asia Europe Foundation, and you have a strong focus as well for so many years, specifically on sustainable development. And it was wonderful to have the opportunity to also work with you in the context of this particular survey. And we look forward to hearing the perspectives that you shed on the outcomes report. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hilge. Greetings from Singapore. It's a pleasure to be here today. We would like to thank you for IAU for partnering in this. So let me share my screen to support the key messages of the Asia Europe breakout report with some visuals as well. Yeah. Sorry, I hope it comes through okay at your end. Can you please confirm that for me?
It does. We see you have 15 slides in a few minutes.
It's gonna be a very quick one. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, so thank you so much for partnering us in creating an Asia Europe breakout report for the HESD survey. In this breakout report, we will feature about half of the total respondents, 240 respondents from 42 of our countries. So we are very happy about this. We are doing this breakout report to identify areas where we could boost a little bit more Asia-Europe collaboration in contributing to the SDGs. And we're also going to complement this study with another one, mapping national policies contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals, national higher education policies, where we will feature 33 countries. So putting these studies together, the policy and the practice, we hope to organize diverse and thought-provoking policy discussions throughout this year. So if any of you are interested in following or participating online, offline, feel free to reach out. And in these occasions, our wonderful researcher team will be also available to engage with directly. But for today, I just brought 3 spotlights from our up-and-coming Asia Europe breakout report, which will be launched in March this year together with the policy report. So 3 spotlights that we hope are interesting for the stakeholders based in Asia and Europe, and will create room for us to discuss further, to unfold and see how we can address these. The first spotlight is on the knowledge gap. So in this HESD survey, one of the first parts was asking the respondents how do they perceive their own knowledge when it comes to different topics. There were six of these very specific topics listed there. And we found it very interesting in our breakout analysis how Asians and Europeans had different perception, especially when it came to the expert level. Respondents from Europe were more likely to put themselves at the intermediate or expert level, almost in case of all the topics, maybe with the exception of global citizenship education or climate change education, where they also felt like they could increase much more their knowledge and expertise. Versus the Asian respondents rather categorized themselves or perceived themselves as having knowledge at the basic or intermediate level. Adding on to this, we also noticed that the biggest obstacle perceived by the Asian respondents was lack of training opportunities. Almost half of them indicated that this is a challenge, that they feel like they are keep holding them back in implementing the sustainable development and pursuing sustainable development initiatives at their institutions. So on this spotlight, our report will also have recommendations how to address this perceived knowledge gap. We think it's important that sustainable development should be acknowledged as a core competency for academics, administrative staff, and students as well in higher education institutions. And we think there is room for more collaboration among Asian and European stakeholders at all levels, local, national, regional, and global level, to come up with joint capacity building opportunities, share best practices, and together produce training resources. The second such spotlight area that our report will highlight is the empowerment of students and staff. Isabel also shared a point about this in her highlight. That was interesting to see also in an Asia-Europe dimension, that when institutions were asked that which unit oversees sustainable development activities in your institutions, then the most commonly chosen category was the leadership level and the faculty and the department level. However, we can see that in case of Asian respondents, absolutely faculty and department are leading, whereas in Europe, mostly dedicated sustainability offices or sustainability departments are in charge at the whole of institutional level in leading or overseeing these initiatives. However, when respondents were asked who is most involved in sustainable development activities in your institutions, then absolutely academic staff and students came up in both regions, in Asia and Europe, as well as the most involved stakeholders. So in this sense, in this breakout report, we will also explore how can we empower students and staff, not just to be involved, but also to oversee and lead and be in charge of sustainable development initiatives at institutions. How can we create more incentives for them to drive such initiatives? How could we create guidelines? How could we exchange best practices where students and staff are taking the lead? And how can we recognize successful projects and successful initiatives led by them? And the third spotlight that this report will also tackle is an evidence-based sustainable development action. How can we collect evidence, more evidence, better evidence? How can we collect in a better way? Because from this HESD survey in Asia and Europe, we saw that almost half of the institutions collect data on sustainable development initiatives. They assess, monitor, and they have some sort of evaluation tools or mechanisms in place. Slightly more European institutions do so than Asians, but we can say that half of them are already doing this. And then the survey inquired that what kind of monitoring and evaluation practices they have in place. It was interesting to see that while in Europe reporting to leadership was the most commonly mentioned or selected tool to monitor and evaluate these initiatives, in Asia it was reporting to external rankings, national or global rankings. So our question in this report, in this spotlight, will be that how can we actually implement better or good practices in documenting and reporting sustainable development projects? How can we use these insights, documents, and reports for better allocation of resources across the institutions? And how can universities, higher education institutions come together and advocate together for a greater allocation of resources, not just the funds, but also manpower, skill, upskilling, and so on, for the goal and purpose of contributing to the sustainable development goals. So these are the three spotlights. It's really just a pitch, and if you're interested in learning more about this outlook report, this institutional practice report and the policy dimension of it, then feel free to join us in March and follow the upcoming policy dialogue in Asia and Europe. Thank you so much. I stop here and back to you again.
Thank you very much, Rekka. This is very interesting, and indeed mapping the knowledge gap is a very important point that is actually also related to the work that the IAU is doing. So excellent partnership there as far as that is concerned, and will be very good to see in that March issue, also in the next steps with ASEF, how you take this up and how you move to the next steps in terms of implementation. So I would like to now, without further ado, give you the floor, Santiago Garcia Granda. You're the former rector of the University of Oviedo, and now you're head of Agenda 2030 and a very esteemed partner also in these processes, and not for the first time, but again, which is a great compliment to the work that we do together. So the floor is yours.
So thank you very much, Jim and Ponchai and everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and greetings to all. I will share my presentation, but I have to say that we are from Crue. We are very satisfied to participate in this work group and in this survey, and also we are very honored to participate in this webinar. So I will go very fast, even if I have 12 or something slides. I will touch a little bit the participation of the Spanish University in the survey, the evolution of the responses, because we have some historical issues, so it's possible to do some study of the evolution, which is very important, and also to comment some ideas to improvement in the next edition of the survey. So this is the one summary of the participation of Spain. The first survey was almost testimonial, with only 2 universities. So, but the second one was the top. I mean, we cannot improve that result. So we were a little bit disappointed this time, right? But when you look at the pie graphic, so you feel a little bit more satisfied, because the number of universities in Spain were still quite high when you compare with the rest of the world. So having this also this good distribution of universities all around the communities in Spain is a good test to see how the whole thing is going progressing in Spain. So sorry about that. So it was also very important to us to have 2 universities participating in the pilot phase. I think this is one important thing that the universities were very satisfied for that. So concerning the results, I only show a little bit of our results. We can compare, as we have mainly two surveys, we can compare the evolutions. And in this slide, you can see easily how the research is getting more and more important in the answers of the Spanish university. You can see that also here, even is clear here, because the answer in the survey 2019-12 were majoritarily no, right? But in this survey, is majoritarily the majority say yes, and the research plays a very important role in the development of the SDGs in the Spanish university, at least. The other thing that has been also shown in the previous presentation is that the most important factors that influence the development of the sustainable development in universities are the lack of funding and the lack of staff. I think this comes from everywhere in the survey, right? Other interesting thing is that the support at institutional levels of the actions on SDGs is quite important and is increasing at all levels, even at the personal level, at the student organization, which is quite satisfactory. So this is also impressive that when you see the existence of one strategic plan to develop sustainable development, was 24.7% in the last survey, 1920, and is 57% in this survey. So that means the universities, at least in Spain, I think everywhere, are taking in seriously the sustainable development in the institutional plans. This one is also very, very important, because here you see that there is one engagement between among the higher education institution, and this is growing at all levels. And also it's important that there is a definition. Everybody knows and answer yes or no. In the previous survey, there were 7.3% that they don't know, right? Really, this is important to change, because the consciences of the development, on the importance of the development of the agenda in the higher education is very important. Let me finish with a few suggestions. The first one is I think it is important to move in the give information, individual information, to all the participants in the survey and compare with the average. The second thing is, I think we want to make studies of the evolution of the answers. We should identify a set of core questions that we can then compare survey after survey. So this is important, because sometimes we change some of the questions, and then it's difficult to compare. So I think it also will be important, if possible, to inform the participant entities individually the evolution of their responses compared with the average evolution. And also, I think we have to make more specific campaigns to the different geographic areas. And then also we have to discuss to identify the best methods to increase the participation, especially in some areas where there is low participation. And in the particular case of Spain, I think we can try to extend, maybe a good idea to try to extend the survey to all official languages. We are now showing the survey in Spanish and English, and I think we have to add probably Catalan, Galician, and Basque. This is a little bit more of work, but I think it is going to be provoking the engagement of some communities, like a Catalan community, which is not completely or full just engaged in the survey. So that's all for my side. Thank you very much, and I repeat that we are very happy being partners of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this excellent presentation. Also good to see how you see the comparison between the two. It's true that last time almost all universities in Spain answered. And it's interesting because probably, as we said at the time, there was also a link between policy at national level and policy at institutional level, which impacted the wish of universities to take part in this. And so it will be very interesting to see how, when we move into the future, also closer to the end of the deadline set for Agenda 2030, what the universities will do. And so the language issue, very interesting. Let's see if that is something that we can do next time around, and also increase the number of languages and how that would impact the response rate. So after having been in Europe at around 2-3 o'clock, we now move to the US very early in the morning, 7 a.m. or almost in Wisconsin, and I give you the floor, Ron. So we moved from 8 p.m. in Thailand, 9 p.m. with ASEF, and now very early in the morning on your side of the world. So that's the beauty of online. There you go.
It is. Thank you very much. And thank you all for having me. I'm happy to be here. My name is Aaron Redmond. I represent the Monitoring and Evaluating Climate Communication and Education project. Just as a quick way of background, we're a global partnership. And our goal is to try to increase the quantity and quality of climate change education and communication. And we're working on, a couple different elements of that that align with the ACE elements that were put together by the UNFCCC. And one of those elements which we're focusing on is higher education and how climate change education and communication is happening in higher education. And thus we were really excited to be part of the IAU survey and have the opportunity to begin to explore what is happening with climate change communication and education in higher education institutions around the world, a place where right now we have really no systematic data. So as part of our contribution, we included 5 questions. There's some also additional details in the report as well, basically intending to get a sense of, at this stage, a real basic sense of sort of what level of climate change education is happening. Like I said before, our interest in both the quantity and the quality. And given the sort of nature of a survey, the focus is, a little bit more on the quantity of climate change education that's happening at institutions around the world. Just to quickly summarize our results, they're up here on the slide, but I'll just read them real quickly since the text is kind of small. We found that about 70% of institutions were offering only a small number of courses in climate content, according to their own rating. About 2/3 of institutions reported that most or all of the climate change courses were in just 1 or 2 departments, the typical natural resources or ecology, biology type of departments. And that research and and external funding was still only a small amount relative to the overall portfolio of universities being focused on climate change. So just to quickly give a summary overall of what we found, I think the big top line finding was that indeed climate change education really has spread around the world at the higher ed level. That we saw that across institutions in all parts of the world, all types of institutions were implementing climate change education to some degree, and that's really I think really exciting. Obviously, of critical importance if we're going to meet the Paris Agreement and continue to reduce emissions. Higher education institutions play such a critical role. Nonetheless, the survey suggested though that widespread existence of climate change education is still somewhat superficial in the sense that number one, it wasn't spread across a variety of the large degree of courses, and so likely there's lots of students that aren't being exposed to climate change. If you're not in one of the degree programs or one of the departments that's offering it, you probably easily can go through your higher education without ever being exposed to any climate change education, yet it's an issue that touches on everybody. And then as well, that much of the research and external funding still the climate change only makes up a small proportion of that at most of the institutions surveyed. So just want to again say thank you. We're taking this, in terms of our work at MECCE, we're continuing to investigate how higher education institutions are implementing climate change education, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate with the IAU and with any of the rest of you in future work. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. This was really a first timer and very nice to have the opportunity to include also climate change education questions in the questionnaire. And we saw also that the questions were slightly different from the other ones, and that some of the respondents hesitated before responding because this notion is still quite new. So it will be very interesting to see in the next iteration of the survey if this concept has also been adopted much more broadly, and how it relates climate change education or education for sustainable development or the other global agendas. I see one of the colleagues from UNESCO is also with us, Bernard Combe, and he's also heading a lot of the work there. So it will be interesting to see how we move on these different agendas that are actually complementary, sometimes overlapping, and how they facilitate the adoption of more proactive action towards sustainable development moving into the future, addressing issues of climate change that are so closely linked to all the SDGs as we come to it. I would in my draft it said that Isabel would make the transition to the next step. Isabel, I will skip that part and unfortunately move into the next panel. That's the danger when the Secretary General has has the floor. She takes over, and not always. Don't be afraid. But I'm very pleased to considering that we were already treated to a lot of data and information. I would like now to go into the next part of the webinar and give the floor to discussants. We've invited 3 colleagues from Andorra, from Unicamp and from University College Dublin to comment on the questionnaire and the survey reports on the basis of what you've just heard. You've participated in the survey itself, and so it would be very nice to have your feedback on some questions that we drafted, but you can take others as well. So I will first ask all 3 of you very quickly, do you believe that this kind of a survey, a global survey on higher education and research for sustainable development, allows to better understand the landscape and maybe also what is needed in universities to accelerate progress towards the SDGs? And then did you use, for instance, the survey questionnaire for your own purposes within the institution to also bring different colleagues and members of staff and students together in order to inform the questionnaire, for instance, which would be another dynamic? So does the survey help to understand what is needed in universities, and should we work with a broader team even next time around to develop same questions plus a few others to move more in that direction? I will give the floor first to you, Miquel Nicolau Vila. You're the rector of the University of Andorra. I know this is a topic also high on the agenda, and so maybe you can reflect on this. 2 minutes, and then we move fast in order to also take some of the questions from the floor. Miquel.
Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from all over the world, from different time zones. So let me first thank the IAU and the IAU Working Group on Higher Education and Sustainable Development, and its especially its president, Porchaimo Honbanit, and Secretary General Dr. Hilary van Laan for inviting the University of Andorra to participate in this launch event. We are midterm until 2030, and I think it's a very, very good time to reinforce the need to work to achieve all these SDGs. I think that the surveys, the 3 surveys alone, have already helped accelerate progress on these SDGs, because answering the surveys already a reflective analysis on where the institution stands in relation to different aspects of the SDGs. We had to answer about the knowledge of different aspects of sustainable development. We said in the reports, access taken, the involvement of the university community, important needs, institutional commitment, and so on. So at least for us, answering the surveys gave us a more open view to develop new actions and disseminate this reflective analysis to the entire university community, students and staff, and also to society. And I am convinced that the results add key information about where higher education institutions stand in relation to SDGs and where my institution stands in relation to other higher education institutions. I will examine the survey results in much more detail, but from what I had today, I would like to highlight the following. First, the number of institutions that have responded to the survey, 464. It's true that it's a bit less than the last survey, the second one, but it's a good quantity. And I think we have to encourage all the members of IAU really to answer this survey, because it's really a lot of data that can help everyone in every institution to go forward in this developing and achievement of the results. The other thing I want to highlight that Reza and Santiago also did is the high degree of knowledge about the SDGs. So I think it's more than 75% that are in expert or intermediate. Of course, it's really, we are in midterm, so we have to push forward this knowledge, because we should be 100% of knowledge of the SDGs if we want to accomplish the achievement in 2030. Another thing that I would like to highlight is the high degree of engagement of the university community with SDGs. The students are the third more engaged, more than 60%. And academic stand the first one with more than 75%. The thing is that leadership level is still less than academic staff. And I think this top-down approach is very important to push forward the universities working in this topic. So we have to really insist that leadership is very, very important to extend the dissemination of all the actions about the SDGs. Another thing is that the detection of difficulties in the implementation of actions towards sustainable development. I think from this diagnosis, we can work to overcome these difficulties. So there are three that are really the most important: lack of training, lack of staff, and mainly lack of funding. So we'll have to ask our governments, mainly for the public universities, to increase this funding in all the project, research, teaching, and community projects. So, but also lack of training, lack of staff is another one that have to be put as a first priority. Another thing is that most of these SDGs are included among the concerns of different higher education institutions. This is a holistic view that is very important, because sometimes higher education institutions may be tempted to focus only in the SDG 4, quality education. I think it will be a mistake. So we have to deal with all of them, with the 17 SDGs. So this is a good news as well. Also, the number of institutions that have a strategic plan have increased from 34% in the second survey to 38%. It's not a big increase, but well, so it's increasing. I think it's important not only to have a strategic plan for sustainable development, but to include this strategic plan for sustainable development into the institution's strategic plan. So, and last, I would like to also to insist in the high degree of institution partnering on sustainable development related terms. So this is the SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. It's true that in the second survey, it was only 13% that answered no partnering. And in this one is 20%, so I don't know why it increased. So, but it's really important. And I think we have to transform our international policy as a policy for SDGs. So it's be the partnership in international policy of our universities as a partnership for international with a SDG perspective. So as I already said, these results do add key information about where higher education institutions stand in relation to the SDGs and where our institution stands in relation to other higher education institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Giuliana Aparecida Fraccaroli, I would like to give you the floor. You come from a different part of the world again, University of Campinas, and you come from the School of Agriculture Engineering. So it's interesting also that your universities took part and that we see another discipline coming in where it will be very interesting to hear your perspectives on this first question, but you can take any of the questions. The three questions for the audience were: how does the survey results help to better understand what is needed in universities to accelerate progress? And as Michael, he also replied to the second one, what recommendation would you give to the leadership? Is leadership important to bring on board? And what could you say to governments, if at all? And can higher education better support the transformation towards a more sustainable future? Take any of the questions, but start with 2 minutes and then we come back to you anyway. Juliana, up to you.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you in this important event. And I will speak represent the University of Campinas in Latin America, Brazil. So the first question, the survey and evaluation of the university's current situation in terms of sustainability is an important management tool and continuous improvement in the transition to a sustainable university. Sustainability indicators can be collected and integrated into a document for evaluation, and universities must create policies to strengthen the points of greatest need for improvement, and an action plan needs to be made. This planning also starts the process of implementing sustainability on university campuses to projects that are developed based on the guidelines of each of the planning areas. These projects can be developed as living laboratories through collaborative processes between the students, professors, and technical staff to implement solutions to the complex challenges brought about by the guidelines. It's possible for universities to be examples for each other in successful cases. This process involves the participation of different university sectors: infrastructure, water, energy, climate change, waste, transport, education, research, and social relations. Students, academic staff, professors, researchers, and administrative staff should be involved in sustainable development in universities. So the higher education institutions are involved in training decision makers and in the production of knowledge and technologies that establish local and global connections with civil society, companies, and governments. With concerns in the environmental, social, and economic sectors, sustainable development became part of the university's agenda in strategic planning, in teaching, research, and extension in the urban planning of the campuses. So thank you very much, and it's an honor to participate in this event, important event.
Yeah, thank you, Juliana. This was very important indeed. And somehow you also stressed what Mikel was saying, this need for partnership, this need for working together, and also answer one of the questions in the chat. What about interdisciplinarity? What about the whole of institution approach? What about the working together towards the goals, and how does that work? Maybe, Colin, that is something that you will touch in your response as well, but I give you the floor also talking from the perspective of Vice President for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion at the University College Dublin, and very much involved in many of the dynamics around sustainable development, not only institutionally, but nationally and internationally. The floor is yours, Colin.
Thank you, Hilich, and thanks everyone. Hello. And so looking at the importance of the survey, I think echoing some of the remarks already made, it's extremely valuable to see the scale and quality of engagement with the SDGs across the sector globally. And it's important for a number of reasons. First, it probably engenders a degree of competition to be better than others, more engaged than others, and empowers those of us working within organizations to say to our leadership, hey, look, we must get going, we must do more around the SDGs. This is not merely my peculiar preference to say we should be advancing the SDGs. This is a global movement in higher education, and the survey and the other activities linked to this demonstrate that. So the competition aspect is important, because if you're appealing to the leadership of institutions, the leaders often are there because they want to be better than others. But paradoxically, I think this is very important, the survey also engenders cooperation and partnership. And that's equally, if not more important. And the survey data around the extent to which there is partnership activity going on, I think is important, because whilst I would support the view that we need to look at whole of institution actions, we also need to look at actions that go beyond our multi-institution, because the scale of the challenges we face, we've heard about the challenge around climate change, but the scale of challenges, not just with respect to climate directly, but also with respect to hunger and inequalities, with respect to the health, human health, the scale cannot be addressed by any one university or any group of universities. And that brings me on to a further point, which is the cooperation with government and the advice to government that governments should be putting a much larger proportion of both core and competitive research funding into addressing the SDGs. And if they're not doing so, we need to articulate the case further, again, repeatedly and more strongly, that the SDGs, is it the only show in town? You could make the argument that if we cannot deliver and achieve on the SDGs as a global society, then none of the other options are available to us. So on that basis, we should prioritize the SDGs for what our institutions are doing in higher education, but also with government and then with the wider range of partners. That's a very strong message to give to government, and I think the survey is supportive of amplifying that message. You're on mute, Hilich.
Sorry, I thought I'd clicked on the right button. I clicked on the wrong one. So yes, you make important statements there. Thank you very much for that. Also supporting the importance of this global report. I think indeed that this dual movement and this tension between competition and cooperation can be very fruitful, actually, because you can compete together in order to reach jointly a different kind of future that we can co-craft in partnership. And we need, as you say, a whole of institution approach to joint actions. And this is also responding to the question that still remains open in the Q&A by Alex Ryan. Can we actually build bridges across the divides? Can we really generate the kind of grounds that will allow us to go more strongly into interdisciplinarity, into multi-perspectivity when it comes to the different visions and perspectives that we need to address the global goals with their local resonance? And so this multi-institution approach will be definitely an opportunity. That's what we've tried to put in place, and which succeeds through the IAU Global Cluster on HESD, and we hope that new university will join that movement as well. Zooming in on some of the SDGs when it comes to engaging more strongly on any of those. I see some of the partners of our HESD Global Cluster amongst the participants as well, from Lebanon or from Germany or from Canada. And so they orchestrate this work with universities of different kinds on different continents, thus really having this multivocal approach to what's happening, the different voices on what is it, how would you address SDG 2, hunger was mentioned, from a Latin American perspective, from what is it in Latin America or in Asia, and how do you address it when it comes to European perspectives, where you also have this diversity, north, south, east, west, or the Arab world, and bringing those voices together is actually what generates new ideas. So where the competition actually gives way to cooperation and to creativity. And that's what we hope that this whole endeavor will allow us to do better. So according to you, how can higher education institutions better support the transformation that is needed? Because we see, Isabel mentioned it on her slides as well, the challenges that universities face is also these rigid structures that universities still have to uphold if they want to be part of this more competitive world in which universities thrive. And the whole publication or Paris paradigm, all the dynamics of what is recognized, not recognized, etc. How will we be able to transform the universities in order to even better engage with sustainable development, with education for sustainable development, with education and research for sustainable development, if we really want to be serious about how academia can engage with SD? It's an ongoing question that we addressed even very recently when we worked very specifically on SDG 14 in South Africa, together with colleagues from Colombia, from Africa, from Ghana, from Norway. We looked at these dynamics, and every time it's the notion of interdisciplinarity, the real transformative kind of education that we need, that still seems to be on the agenda without finding the resonance at institutional level as it should. So Mikkel, would you like to try and answer that one? You have to unmute your mic as well.
Sorry, yeah. I would like to express my conviction that nothing should be a limitation to become really an active part in achieving these SDGs. We, for example, are a very small university. We call ourselves a micro university. And we are the only one public in Andorra that is also a microstate with only 80,000 inhabitants and a surface of about 450 square kilometers, so very, very small. And as a micro university, our resources are quite limited. But this fact has never limited us from aligning our actions and developing new ones to achieve the SDGs. We have also considered it essential to develop actions at both levels, institutionally, including the community engagement and campus initiatives, and in teaching and research. All these actions have been led at first by the leadership team in a top-down approach. But in the first approach, we define a main goal to push the whole university community to become SDG leaders in their domains, in their disciplines, in order to develop a bottom-up approach that is much richer in results. And I think at the institutional level is very important, I said it before, to introduce the SDGs into the institutional strategic plan. Not only to have a strategic plan for sustainable development, but also to have the SDGs in the institution's strategic plan, because it is a public commitment that must be followed by the entire institution and at all levels, and that must also be assumed by the students. We did it, and from this strategic goal, we began to transform all our activity in order to achieve this goal. That help us to develop new actions and also to place already existing actions and strategies in the context of the SDGs. For example, our international strategy now is one of our ways of developing Goal 17, partnerships for the goals. I said that before. We are truly convinced that Goal 17 is the fundamental one that will enable the achievement of the other goals, because the remaining existing goals are so challenging that no country, no network, no association, no institution alone will be able to solve by itself. So I think this is really important. Sometimes I told before as well, the higher education institutions may be tempted to focus exclusively on SDG 4, quality education. And indeed, this is the cornerstone of the SDGs for higher education. But I think that we have to deal with all these SDGs in a holistic view at the institutional level, and also in teaching and research. This is the only way that we can encourage and push the whole society to doing that. So we can do a lot to support the transformation, and not towards a more sustainable future, but towards a sustainable future. And even more important, we can spread the need to achieve these SDGs to our students through teaching and campus initiatives, and also to society, to research, through community engagement, and above all, being an example in all our actions and strategies. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I will give the floor to Juliana, 2 minutes, then Colin, and then I would like to invite Pornchai to also, from a university in Thailand perspective, in 2 minutes. Santiago, what you see at the national level, if there is a movement also towards recognizing this dynamics and towards how to see the universities as a real partner in transforming towards sustainable development, and Reka in the ASEF dynamics as well. So first Juliana, then Colin, then Pornchai, Santiago, Reka. The time is flying, so please stick to 2 minutes. Juliana.
Universities are training centers for future decision makers for the social, environmental, political, and economic sectors. There are opportunities for disseminating knowledge and the practice of sustainable development by training professionals and leaders, production of knowledge and technologies, and promotion of training in the community. The universities can develop the intellectual and conceptual framework to achieve sustainable development. Universities located in developing countries have an even greater mission and must allow the neediest population in their surroundings to have access to good education conditions as a way of improving the income of the most needy and vulnerable people. Also, considering the university campus as an urban locus or even a microcosm of society, the change that begins at university is an opportunity for example and replication in the city. University campuses are spaces for knowledge production, training centers for theoretical applications where sustainability can be learned, created, applied, and implemented. Thus, the cities where the universities are located can work in cooperation and implement the actions studied and validated in the universities. Actions can be carried out in the neighboring cities and so on until several schools, city halls, and companies can also develop and incorporate sustainability policies into the operation of their entities. In this way, sustainability policies and actions for combating climate change and social justice can be inserted in the governance of several entities. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you so much. You touch on this example setting of a university and also translating theory into practice and how to scale up action through all the work of, this is also one of the points that was clear in Mikael's intervention just before. So this is a very important point. To Colin.
So I think there's a real challenge for universities because universities are very conservative institutions. In many countries, only religious institutions are older than universities. Universities are the great survivors in many countries, and they survive primarily through being conservative, not through being radical. And yet, we want universities to be radical around addressing the SDGs. How to fit those two things together? One idea is to work with the systems of the university, so the systems around managing educational programs, systems for managing research projects and outputs, and try to incorporate the SDG challenges into the systems we find, and over time. So universities may very well retain faculty structures, discipline structures. That is, in many instances, the essence of a university, to be organized in non-interdisciplinary ways. And then how to overlay that structure of interdisciplinary engagement over the top. That, I think, is a very significant leadership challenge. There's a lot of bottom-up energy, as Mikael observes, and the bottom-up is extremely important. And the leadership challenge is to find ways to join up that capacity and to make it more than the sum of the parts of what can go on in individual departments and faculties. And so the grand challenges that we face need that focus in the institutional structure of leadership, but also with the external incentives from government, government funding. I mean, as we all know, if government offers a pot of funding for a particular set of challenges, the universities will rush towards that in order to get more funding. It's one of the things that I think universities in many countries are very good at, is adapting themselves to new funding opportunities. So it's a bit cynical perhaps to say that, but funding is critical here, alongside the way the leadership meets the bottom-up energy and commitment that we see every day from so many of our researchers and indeed our students.
Thank you very much. There is one question that we can already take at the same time. Is there any way to include SDGs and CEE in higher education in a way that would actually also benefit the broader community? And it's nice that this question from Mariana Campos Rivera, who contributed to the report, comes in now, because this is exactly also what has been done at SIAM University. So 2 minutes, Point Chai, would you like to react to the question and maybe take this on board as well?
I think that what we're trying to do in Thailand, especially in Thailand, is the university should learn through engaging with the community. And we also trying to use the community as our test bed. And secondly, I think that the university have to work together. We also have the example of Sustainable University of Thailand, which include in the past, it include 9 or 10 universities. Right now, it includes more than 30 universities working together, and not only talking, but also trying to demonstrating how we can tackle in this in this mission. And then I think that we also trying to involve more of the student. So I think that in Thailand, we try to work together and try to increase the involvement of our students. And one more thing that I like to mention is that probably I think that that should be the task of the university to cultivate our local way of life. because in the past we don't use this much plastic bottle. We don't use this much disposable thing, and then we just try to forget it due to industrialization. And I think that there are many kind of this concept in Asia, and as a lot of people say that there are a lot of knowledge gap in Asia. Probably what Asia can do is trying to recultivating our way of life. I still remember when I was very young, all of what we have done almost very sustainable. But when we develop more and more, we have the way of life that is less and less sustainable. So I think that what we should do is thinking about the Asian way of living as well. So I think that these are the things that I think that I like to recommend. And I think that we have to work with the community. We have to not only to focus on the university, but what the university can do for the community. And then we also can learn on the project with the community. So this is my response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's interesting because this is something that is done in Latin America quite a bit as well, in other parts of Asia, coming up in Europe more strongly, but a bit more new, I would say. In the US, there is also this community engagement part, and the notion that you're referring to is Sejatra, no? And the other part that would be more of the Thai version of this way of life and the SD. Santiago, could you also react from your end, and then at Crue level, so at the Conference of Universities in Spain, and then maybe take also the question by Detlef. What is it that you see is coming into the system when it comes to engaging with the students, or to engage the students, or are the students also those who push for a stronger focus on SD?
Many things have been said, and I don't want to repeat because I agree most of them. I think the universities are creating leaders at all levels. So it's very important to green in the campus. If you green the campus, you will get impact on the society. So all universities in Spain have very interesting initiatives, but sometimes one university don't know really the one good initiative of other university. So it's very important the reporting, the global reporting initiative will be important for all universities, and also the transparency. I think we have to be transparent in our actions with the whole community. If the community feels confident of this, also it's very important to the introduction of concepts of SDG, and particularly environmental concepts in the teaching programs. That is really important to get the consciousness of these people after they go to the society. So the other important thing is that we need tools to compare surveys with reality. So I think at the universities, Crue in Spain is creating a group of data in order to analyze the whole thing at the Spanish level. So to provide the ways to collect all information and see how all this transformation is changing in Spain. For me, it's very important to pay attention to the doctoral school. The doctoral school is going to be produced scientists for the industry, scientists for the companies, and also scientists for the academics. So the activities of doctoral schools in the campus will be also very important. Also, to involve the society, I think they are important. The so-called social reporters or social research reporters. So many of the things involved in the climate change, many of the things that we are seeing, transformation of our environment, are seen by the people. So research projects with participation of the people are very important. So these people will be conscientious of the change, and also will feel involved with the universities, and also the many other things that volunteers for students. I think the question of the students is I think we don't have to exclude one thing or the other thing. You have to form your students. The programs need to have contents on these subjects. Of course, they have to become experts, but also they need to have initiative, because many times the initiatives of the young people are not really the initiatives that all people can do. So the professors cannot do many things that the students can do. So this is I think I spent more than 5 minutes, but then
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, very good, because this is also this multi-stakeholder participation in the processes that you allude to. And I think that makes the real difference. And so it's the capacitating of each voice within an institution that will make the difference moving into the future. Rekka, I will give you the floor, and then I see, conscious of time, that we're running out of time. I would already like to thank everyone for your participation, the speakers, the respondents, the participants with their questions. And after Rekka, I will give the last, famous last words to Poincha and to Isabel. But first, Rekka, 1 minute if you can, Isabel, and then Poincha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. Yeah, thank you. My 2 cents to this conversation is that I think the fundamental challenge with universities' contribution to the SDGs as goals and framework is that SDGs were not designed for universities. They were designed for government, and all the indicator systems and everything are there for the governments to report on. However, and that's why also, like Mikael said, universities most often can relate best to SDG 4, because that's about education. But they should address the whole of the system, and they are wonderful systems still, and they can use it. So the challenge is how to combine the global goals with the local needs. And for Colin, it was a leadership challenge. I would frame it as a little bit like a leadership strategy challenge, how to translate these global goals into local, and how to measure the system dynamics that we have around universities, because each universities are in very different positions to contribute to this or that goal, which also comes through your network in IAU. Here you identified leads of hubs where the universities are in a very special position to particularly promote one SDG, depending on the country, on the geographical location, on the society. So I think the challenge for universities is to do these system dynamics maps around them to see where they can best contribute, and if they contribute, how does that negatively reinforce other SDGs? Like if we are contributing to decent work, that usually already measure that it has negative reinforcement on everything that has to do with environment, or if we or what are the things that our actions would positively reinforce in our own ecosystem, in our own environment and systems. So I think there are a lot of good examples on this in Asia, like organic examples, like Poincha said, our way of life, how they consider their own systems around them and how they contribute. And they are also very brave and very innovative examples in Europe. So for us, for Asia Europe Foundation, we do our best to collect these and make conversations around this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then Isabel and Poincha, you will help us conclude this conversation, which is actually only a conversation starter for much more. So thank you to all. Isabel.
Thank you very much, Ilija, and thank you to all the speakers. So we had this one conversation, but actually we need to have a lot of conversations on the global context, on the local, with the different parts of the university, within the university, with leadership, with students, with the community. So it's really several conversations that we're trying to then spark from this conversation and from the data and the findings of the report. It's great to hear about the good practices that you have, just like challenge between the local and the global, challenge between the students and the leadership. And I think for that, if we share these, we can also then inspire solutions and really make sure we can accelerate our actions for the sustainable development goals, also for sustainable development more broadly. And I've promised in the beginning that I will share the link in the chat to the full report, which I have just done. You will find it also in a couple of minutes on the main IAU website. You cannot miss it. It will be a big picture. It will look like the cover of the report that I have shown you before. And also you will be able to receive the recording once it's available, and the link to the report. Everyone who's registered in Zoom will get a follow-up email as well. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all the great questions. Please do also follow IAU or sign up for our newsletter if you're interested in the community of practice or other resources. And yeah, to conclude, I would just like to then give the floor back to you, Pornchai, to close the session.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would like
Okay,
to
so-
just add that you will receive the link straight also from Isabel. Also a link to the IAU Global portal on the HESD, where you will find information that people were asking about, teacher information on student activities, information from around the world. So the global portal is just there. Isabel just published it. I think, Aaron, what would be nice is also for people to receive direct information on the MECCE project so that they can have further information there. ASEF as well, if you have, you can put some links there. And Santiago on Crue initiatives, more from the organizational perspective. And then from your different institutions, we definitely would like to update and upgrade the information, Campinas or University College Dublin or the University of Andorra, also on the portal, so that people find your information on how to link up and to develop these partnerships that are so crucial. Pornchai, back to you.
Yeah. What I like to say is that I have learned a lot, and I also have got a lot of good ideas. So I like to thank a lot for all the speakers, our Secretary General, Hillage Van Land, and also Isabel. And I think that we can have some conclusion that in the big picture, I think that higher education institution has done a better job in tackling with higher education for sustainable development comparing to the first and second survey. But there still be a lot that we have to do. That is, the first thing is to bridge the knowledge gap. And I think that this is also very important between the institution in different country, in different region, or even within the same country and the same region. And the second thing is that probably we need to transform the university operation in order to achieve the SDG, especially make it the whole institution approach and also the holistic strategy. And the third one, I think that I'd like to stress that we need to work together like our cluster, and then we can learn faster when we can compare. And the fourth one is that I think that we also need to rethink about what we have done. Something that we have done before might be a good thing to do. So we also have to rethink and recultivate our way of life as well. So I think that we have learned a lot, and we also looking forward to more action that we can work together under the IAU HESD. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I think we have to close this session and only look forward to the next one, where we can dig deeper in some of the issues that have been raised. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.